following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, aka the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery. Welcome to Exit Team Nashua. Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. I'm Jasmine, and I'm your host. As you just saw, Exit Team takes people with recovery experiences, real-life recovery. We bring it right into your living room. Take a look around. Bobby's not here. You seen Bobby?
No, Bobby. No, I don't know where he is.
Yeah, so
he abandoned us.
We're going to take a poll. If you want Bobby to be fired, vote in with a 1. If you want Bobby to stay on the show, vote in with a 2.
Bobby can't vote.
Bobby can't vote. That's great. Yeah. Just kidding. We love you, Bobby. We miss you.
Hope to meet you soon.
Yeah. I was telling Keith how the show is always really good because Bobby and I will banter back and forth, and so Bobby's not here. So in honor of Bobby, I still have to
do some bantering. So
yeah, and he's not...
see if I can hold my own.
Yeah. Okay. So there's this weird stranger sitting across the table from me. No. Hi. How did you get here?
I was actually walking down the street and someone just pushed me in here, said there was no one to show up tonight, so they asked me if I could do it.
They thought you were Bobby?
Yeah.
They were like, hey, Bobby. Yeah. Okay, cool. I noticed your shirt. What's your shirt say?
So, White Mountains Recovery Homes, and you can't really get the bottom of it, I don't think. Where am I looking? Over here?
No, you're going to look right at me.
I'm looking right at you. Okay, so yeah, there's the phone number, contact information.
What's the phone number?
So it's 603-262-3964.
And what is White Mountain Recovery Homes?
So we're a 12-step men's recovery home. We're based in Littleton, New Hampshire, and we're also in Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And we have 45 beds total right now.
Wow.
And yeah, and growing. So we're looking at a 5th home in Littleton, actually. So there'll be 4 total in Littleton and then the 1 in Plymouth.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so 45 beds currently, opening a 5th home. That tells me that you're having success.
Well, I guess fortunately and unfortunately, yes. I mean, there is an epidemic, and addiction isn't a new thing. Our homes are set up a little bit differently than most other homes, I believe. From what I've seen through my experience, we're very structured. The men that come to the house, it's like I said, it's 12-step based. So if you show up at a 12-step fellowship, what do they tell you? Some of the suggestions. Go to a 90-90, get a sponsor, do, step work with a sponsor, have a home group, a service position. So those are all things that when the men come into the home, they sign off contracts, saying that they'll do those things.
Level of willingness.
Yeah.
So you accept only willing men?
Yeah. Okay. You have to be willing. I mean, they're signing off on contracts. Another thing that we do require is that they see a therapist once a week.
That's
and
pretty
so
cool.
We don't choose the therapist for them. We allow them to choose their own therapist. So we help them navigate, because obviously, we're in the North Country, there's a limited selection, but we do help them navigate that. But they can always choose to, see somebody else if they're not comfortable, because the idea is for them to get, comfortable in therapy, for them to recover. So it's not for us.
I've been up to your homes before. I lied, guys. I lied to you when I said it was a stranger.
She didn't lie about Bobby, though. Bobby's not coming in.
And I don't see any votes coming up on the screen, so I'm disappointed in all the viewers. Just kidding. I love you all. And I've been up there, and so your houses are beautiful. And so, one thing that I talk about often on this show is connection, and how I'm a firm believer that the opposite of addiction is connection, and how we need each other. And, for me, in my experience with 12 steps, like 12 steps provided me to, form a connection with myself, form a connection with a higher power, which I had no idea, and form connections with other people, so 12 steps gave me what I had been lacking my whole life. And what I loved when I went up to your house is that it is such a tight-knit community, right. And you have like these family dinners, and like the men are so supportive of one another. And I was like, this is really magical in my opinion.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah. I definitely, and I agree, I've seen, God's definitely blessed whatever it is that we're doing. I feel that I was just called into this. You know, I've worked in the addiction treatment field since 2004. Obviously in Massachusetts, just in case anyone didn't catch that accent.
Do you hear the accent?
Yeah, I get a lot of problems for that at home. My wife's, I actually grew up in Somerville, so my wife's from Stoughton, and her and, you know, my stepson, they'll give me a hard time about
I'm
all
from
that,
New Hampshire, so I have no idea what that means.
Yeah. So anyways, so, you know, I moved up here a few years ago to New Hampshire, and I've always come up to the White Mountains on vacation. I love it. You know, it's the place where I would go and like disconnect from the craziness in the city and come up here and just, you know, be on vacation. And so, you know, I was fortunate enough to buy a house, and, you know, I had a state job in Mass. I worked for the Department of Mental Health at a female Section 35 at the time, which took years for me to get there. A female Section 35 is basically a Section 35 is
What
a
is a section?
civil commitment.
Thank you for our viewers that don't know. So what is a civil commitment? So our viewers know.
So
because New Hampshire, we don't have sectioning.
Not yet, but I think they're working on that right now.
We really need it.
You do. So in that kind of situation, a civil commitment would be if a family member or a spouse or a sibling, and they have, you know, a loved one who's in danger from their addiction, they can petition the court, and the court can section them into a facility. So in Massachusetts, you have agencies like High Point that have a men's addiction treatment center that they will go there, and usually they're there for about 14 to 21 days. The section is for 90 days.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it's up to 90, but a lot of the times you're dealing with insurance and things like that, so they're not there that long. But it is a good place because then...
So the minimum is 14 days. So if I were to get someone sectioned, I know that they would be held for at least 14 days.
Pretty much,
okay.
Yeah, depending on the insurance. But normally, I haven't seen anyone really leave any earlier than that. I worked for Matsy for about 5 or 6 years, and then so the women's Section 35 went from BSAS to the Department of Mental Health, and so that was a big change. The governor issued it to the Department of Mental Health. So then the women's Section 35 started, which had the Department of Mental Health connection with BSAS, and so a lot of people from BSAS funded agencies, contracted agencies like myself, went over to the state agency because it's a state job. So, you know, I'm working the state job. I became the union shop steward because it was a new, you know, part of the state. So everything was going on. I had a house in Brockton, and, you know, I bought this place up in North Woodstock, and I almost slipped right off my chair. You see that?
Would have been great.
Yeah,
you would have been hired, and Bobby definitely would have been fired if you could do that every show for me.
Right.
So this is great because we're this is like, you know, going right into the question for you.
Right. How did I start the houses? So yeah, it's definitely a good segue. I'll get there. We got like a half hour, so no stop.
It goes by quick, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
You know, but it's an amazing story. So like I came up here and I just was like, you know, I said to my wife at the time, you know, my girlfriend, and I said, listen, you know, I just feel like I want to move up there. And we just uprooted and came up. And I took a job at an agency called the Friendship House, and I worked there. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, I'm working at a facility on the side of a mountain. You know, what kind of problems are up here? You know, I had no idea you know, because you don't see it. You know, I would come on vacation. I didn't see addicts walking around. Now that I live there, I can see it. You know, there's the underbelly of it all. And so I started working there, and I worked at the Friendship House for about a year. And, you know, I had clients that were getting ready to transition back out into society. And say 5 out of 25 would get connected in that area. It was in Bethlehem, New Hampshire, which is right next door to Littleton. They would get connected to 12-step recovery and things like that, and there was no place for them to go. And I was just amazed at that because, you know, back where I was living, I actually moved from Brockton, Mass, up here. And there's a recovery house on every corner.
Right. Mass has a whole plethora of resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there was an opening for it, you know, and I put one foot in front of the other, and we started White Mountain Recovery Homes. And we started with one house right on Main Street, which is the main address, the 669. That's like our center, you know, house. And when I started the business, I put White Mountain Recovery Homes. And I pluralized that, and a friend of mine pointed out, he said, oh, you got big plans, huh? And I said, well, yeah, I just, you know, I felt compelled, but I was just driven. I just felt that there was something that was going to happen here. And I just went with the flow. You know, at the time my wife was pregnant, I was making a good salary at the Friendship House, and I had about 6 residents at the recovery house. And I made a decision to leave full time and focus on this business full time. And I had nowhere near the income. You know, baby on the way, mad bills to pay, all that. You know, so
I feel you literally right now in my life. It's like where I'm at.
So, and there was a lot of fear.
No baby on the way. Oh shit, let me
retract that.
Oh god. Okay, sorry.
So it was a pivotal moment. I was surrounded with some people at the time. I got introduced to some people. He talked about the community, especially in Littleton. I'm also a Christian. I'm a believer. I love God. I love Jesus. And I was going to not even going to church yet, actually. And I had a gentleman show up from the church. He knocked on the door one day, and I had a prospective intake coming in. I thought it was him. So I welcomed him in. It was this guy from the church. He said, "Hey, I'm Jeff so-and-so. And I do the prison ministry in Grafton Jail, and I heard about the house, and I want to walk with you and help you and everything else." And and he's been right by our side ever since we started, which has been amazing. He called me up one day and said, "Listen, I want you to come look at a house." So I went and looked at it, and he said, "What do you think of this for a recovery house?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it'd be a good idea, but I don't have that kind of money." He said, "I'm going to buy the house. You can lease it from me," so on and so forth. So it's the way things have fallen into place has just been incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and there's so much more to it too. There was, we had a plan now to start this other home. I'm new in the state of New Hampshire. I really wasn't sure if I was going to have the resources to fill the home. And at the same time, my wife was working for a company, and the owner of that company had a recovery house in Plymouth. And we randomly got a call one day. He had us come down there. He said, "Hey, this agency isn't working out." He goes, what do you guys think about taking this house over?" And I told him, I said, I don't think so. I said, I have to go and pray on this and really, contemplate this before I make the wrong move. And I went home and I prayed on it. And one day I got the scripture. I get scripture sent to my phone every day. And it was 1 Chronicles 28:20. And it was King David talking to his son. I actually have the scripture, so I'm just going to read it real quick. It's a short scripture, but it was very powerful. So it said, "And David said to his son Solomon, his son, be strong and of good courage, and do it. Fear not, nor be dismayed. For the Lord God, even my God, will be with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you until you have finished all the work for the house of the Lord." And so I get this scripture sent to me, and I said to my wife, "What do you think of this?" And she said, "That's how God talks to us." And so we called them and said, "Okay, we'll go for it." And so those 3 houses are full, obviously. We ended up buying another house shortly afterwards. Then I was able to purchase another house, and it's just been amazing. We have a whole community now in Littleton where predominantly it was one fellowship. We started some meetings in another fellowship, 12-step fellowship, which has been growing. The Serenity Center, which is a peer-to-peer support center, is right next door to us. So we have that dual relationship going on, which has just been great. It's a whole different community. It's amazing to be a part of it.
So what was your drive and your motivation, other than your calling to want to help people, but why did you choose to help people who are suffering from substance use disorder?
Well, I'm in long-term recovery. I grew up around active addiction my whole life. I grew up in Somerville. My father lived in Lynn. I would go stay with my dad. My dad was a workaholic. He wasn't an addict. My father passed away young, and I dove into active addiction, and I used every single day.
How old were you when you first started using?
13.
13.
I was actually 11 when I first tried alcohol. And I don't always say that when I share my story, but I was. And I was actually just talking with Jamie on the ride down here and saying how I actually first drank at a camping trip up in the White Mountains, actually, when I was a kid. It was okay. Back then it was in the 80s. It was okay to have a beer at home, I guess. But so my addiction really took off though at 13 years old. My father passed away. I used every day. I stopped going to school. I ended up going.
And you lived in Mass?
I lived in Lynn, yeah. I lived in Lynn,
okay.
Mass. And I ended up getting in trouble legally, so I had to move back to Somerville with my mother. And, when I used every day, I told my mother when I got in the car at 13, I said, "Miles, I smoke weed, I drink, and you're not going to stop me. So if there's going to be a problem, I'm running away." And my mother was like, "Okay, fine." And so, I went into DYS facilities, which is juvenile, holdings in Mass. And 17, I'm incarcerated. I'm in an adult jail. And it was just nonstop. I was just caught up in the grips. My using was in the bitter ends the whole time. And I was, I was lost. And so, I went in and out of jail for years. I was, doing larcenies, armed robberies, everything you can name. And then, I would go to get out of jail.
Were you committing crimes to feed that phenomenon of craving? Once you start, you can't stop. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know, I'm just speaking on like personal experience, because like I've committed a lot of crimes and I've served a lot of jail time. And so people that know me today, they're like, I could never see you doing that. Well, because in a sober state of mind, I never would. But
Right.
like the disease is so powerful. And for someone like myself who has what we call the allergy in my fellowship, it is so strong that like I will do things against my nature. You know what I mean? Like I robbed my dad. You
Right.
know, and that's like not who I am. I'm a really loving person who like loves my family, and I'm so grateful for my family. And so you were doing these things against your nature to feed your drug addiction.
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
so. You know,
Okay.
and but it was also a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's true
Where
too.
I grew
Yeah.
up. You know, there was a lot of guys that, and I've, you know, shared this recently. I mean, there was guys that were going to, you know, that's why I thank God. I mean, God intervened in my life because, you know, I was incarcerated 3.5 years this last time, and I just decided to stop getting high in the middle of the bid. I was 18 months in, and I just said, you know what, I'm done. And I knew I needed to do something different. I knew, and I told myself, I'm going all in. I'm doing the whole thing. I'm doing all the 12-step stuff, everything I've heard for years that I wrote off as corny or, you know, it's not going to help me or whatever the case is. And I just decided this is it. I'm going all in. And if it doesn't work out, I'm going out with a bang because it's not worth it. And that's where I was at. And I was 25 years old. I turned 26. I got out and I paroled to Brockton, Mass, which to me was, might as well have been in the White Mountains. I mean, I felt like I was out in the middle of nowhere. And I wanted to be home in Boston, but it wasn't in the cards for me. And I feel like God placed me down there. You know, and I stayed the rest of my recovery 14 years. But there was a group of guys that I knew that I had grown up with, and they were still committing crimes, and they were sober. You know, they were going to meetings, and some of them started young people's meetings in the city next door that I grew up in. And they went and did some major crimes. So, you know, that was a lifestyle thing. And I needed to be in a different environment where that wasn't really so accepted. You know, the guys weren't out scalping tickets or living that kind of fast life. I needed to be transitioned out of it. But in my first year clean, I couldn't really see that. You know, I was like, oh, I want to go back home and slow down here and this and that. But I thank God, you know, he put me right where I was supposed to be. And as a result, I was able to really get into the 12-step process and really like take a look within myself and learn how to practice spiritual principles. I don't think I would have done that if I went back home to my environment. And that's not about a geographical cure either. I just think for me, that was one of the many pieces that held my recovery
all
together.
your cars had to like line up at like that exact point in time, and they just happened to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because I was on the phone with someone earlier today, and we were like processing a situation that had happened, and the individual that was on the phone, she was like, I just don't understand how these people can do these terrible things and stay sober.
Right.
Because for people who have been called to live a spiritual life, which a lot of recovering addicts have, we've been called to live by spiritual principles and adhere to these principles. And I know when I'm not adhering to a principle or I'm doing something that doesn't align with myself, I hit pain. And how much pain do you sit in before you like get high?
Right.
You know, and I was like, there are people that like they get sober and like they can live dirty still, and it's so.
For a period. You know,
Yeah.
I've been fortunate. I've just celebrated 16 years.
Hey,
Yeah, right? So
that's amazing.
It is. We had a big get together too. My son just turned 1. My stepson just turned 11. And it was Mother's Day, so we had a whole like family event at one of the recovery houses. So we invite all the recovery houses together, and my wife, like, she should be here on the TV show too because like she cooks.
You told me she's like a firecracker, right? She's just full
Unbelievable.
of life. We should
Yeah.
get her on. That's
Yeah,
great.
for sure.
Yeah.
She
Does she have a sense of humor?
Of course she does.
Will she fire
lives with
Bobby
me.
for me? Will she fire
She'll
Bobby
fire
for me?
him in a heartbeat. Tara, get down here and honey, handle this.
We'll give you his address.
Yeah, right. But she, you know, she got up in the morning. She's cooking trays of lasagna, chicken, broccoli alfredo, the best food you've ever had, either too. And you know, just so all these spreads. We're doing a cookout. We fellowship with the guys, and it, you know, it was great. So like, but that was a big celebration. So May, you know, was my anniversary, and so through the 16 years, you know, I've seen a lot of people do grimy stuff clean, but they go back out. You know, and sometimes it takes a while, you know, and that's what can like detract a newcomer from what's really going on, because you can see people will stay clean for a period of time and do some grimy stuff or not do everything they're supposed to do. But it always, you know, like the old expression, you know, it all comes out in the wash.
Right, and not to like sit here on any spiritual hilltop and be like, oh, I'm
Right.
Jasmine, I'm perfect, because I'm not.
Right.
I fall short a lot. Sometimes I'm aware of falling short, and sometimes I'm not. But when I do become aware of like any harm that I've caused, I write it.
Right.
You know, and I humble myself, and I'm like, oh God, I kind of did this, you know, because I'm not perfect, you know, and I try to live by spiritual principles the
I'm
best I
actually
can.
perfect, so no.
This is so amazing.
Right. No, it's a
This is
process.
so great to be in your presence.
Right.
Thank you so much.
That's
Do you
why
want?
Bobby didn't show up, because he
Yeah,
knew
I know. I
there's
was
too
gonna
much
say,
power in the
do
room
you
for.
want this seat? You sit here. I'm gonna sit there.
Yeah. Do you want me to interview you now?
Yeah. I think the viewers are sick of seeing me. Just start bringing guests on.
Right.
They've been seeing me every Wednesday for well over a year now.
Well, hey, they're
Yeah.
blessed that, you know, they're blessed and fortunate to have this resource. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's
huge.
really cool. Actually, I want to. So I know you had given us the phone number. What's the phone number to contact you? Anyone's looking for sober living.
Yeah.
Do you ever like scholarship people or help people that don't have resources get in the door?
No, we don't help people. We're
Yeah.
not about helping
There
people.
you
We're about
go.
making money. No. So let me give you the number
Don't
first.
even get me
Just kidding.
started. Don't even.
So it's 603-262-3964.
Do you have a website?
We do. It's whitemountainrecoveryhomes.com.
Say that again.
whitemountainrecovery.com. Sorry. Yeah. Did I say homes? I added homes in.
You did.
If
I
you
actually
Google
did.
us,
Oh,
it comes
perfect.
up.
It's
Here
on
it
the
is.
screen. Okay, I didn't
right.
know that. I just want to make sure our viewers hear it. Okay,
Right.
so they. Okay, perfect. It's up there.
So yes, we do scholarship people. It's individualized. One thing is we charge $140 a week. So
Which is really affordable for sober living, by the way.
It is affordable. I mean,
Yeah.
I've looked around, and yeah, we are affordable. And I do that because of my own experience. Like when I got out of jail, I didn't have money. There was no one's footing the bill for me. And so I would go back out and get high, and not, you know, I wanted to get high, so I can't blame anybody for it, but I didn't have the help. And so one of the things we do work with scholarships, we have some guys come out of prison. We take a lot of guys on reentry. That's a big problem up here in New Hampshire, all over the whole country, obviously, you know. And so my heart is really for the addicts that are going through that. And so if I have a guy who will call and say he's truly indigent and he can't come into the house, I'll foot the bill for them and let them, you know, once they get working and they're in the process of working, then they can start paying the $140 a week, and we don't ask them to get caught up. And we've
That's
done that
amazing.
with a few guys. Yeah, you know, it's God's provided everything, so it's like I have to be able to make room for people, and you know, it's not like it's not a hit, you know. And we have people that have scholarship. A lot of our guys coming in, Chucky's fight. I mean, they scholarship so many guys coming into the house. Stars. I mean, there's so many people that are willing to be there and to help, you know, people to get on their feet, you know. And oftentimes they come in on those scholarships, and they don't get work right away, and we don't just kick them out. You know, I mean, if we have a guy, I mean, look, you know, I shared a little bit of my story. I'm not a dummy. I can kind of get it when someone, you know, we know when someone's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. If we got a guy outside and he's, you know, smoking large and drinking monsters all the time, he's telling us he doesn't have money, then chances are, you know, he's full of it, right? But if you're out there, you're looking for work and you're trying to help yourself, we're gonna help you. And that's, you know, because we want to see people. We have like a family dynamic up there.
I know. I love it. I love that. I saw that immediately. So there's been a question that we have been ignoring for quite some time now.
I don't know who's asking questions.
That person's fired too.
Yeah, fire him. No, I can't fire him. He's my right hand.
So how has the local community received the recovery homes?
So far, really well. You know, we've been so blessed with that before starting the homes, I pretty much like went into the town and got connected, and you know, and people were like, we need this here, we need this here. And so I was like, well, I'm going to start it. And I don't think that everyone thought I was really going to do that. And so when it got done, you know, it's been accepted. You know, the local police department, I mean, they sing our praises because we're holding people accountable too. Like, we want to erase that stigma that, like, you know, the addicts out in the street using, getting high, or, you know, we're trying to get that away. Like, the guys, when they get work, they have to give a 2 weeks notice if they're going to leave another job.
Right, because you want to hold, like, still stand good with the community as well. Then you don't want people to be like, don't hire the guys from White Mountain.
Well, it's all levels, you know. Recovery is all levels. You can't just, you know, work a 12-step program, and like you said, people live in grime, dirty. So we got to teach. You know, we got to teach. I needed to be taught, you know, because I would get a job, and if it was, you know, a get well job, and I'm making $11 an hour, and someone says, oh, I'll give you $20 an hour, but you got to start tomorrow, and see you later. The $11 an hour job, you know, who cares now? I'm going to this other job. And, you know, I needed to learn to like give a 2 weeks notice and be professional about it. And then, you know, and then I'm able to keep that on my resume. So when I go to the next place, I can say, yeah, I worked here and I worked here. And now I'm building my character back up. Because a lot of times, you know, as addicts, we burn bridges.
Yeah.
You know, so we're teaching the individual to do that. It's about the individual first, but as a result, it spreads into the community. And so now when I have a new guy coming in from the prison who has a record and all these other barriers up against them, I'm able to say, hey, go down to, you know, this place or that place, and they get hired because they know that we're helping people to keep them accountable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. So my information's on the screen for anyone who is interested. That's my personal cell phone number. Anyone struggling, looking for help, looking for resources, can't understand what Keith's saying because of his accent and needs his number, feel free to call me, text me.
Smart.
Yeah, he's a wicked smart. There's my email address. And as always, you can find us on our Facebook page. I'm a heroin addict. If you haven't already, please go like that page. I'm trying to build it, and as well as try and build the exit team. You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love what we do here on the exit team. We're all volunteers. We all, you know, it's very altruistic. Like from the camera guys to the producer to me, we all just volunteer our time. We get the guests, we build the promotions, we build the web page. Because we want to help.
Yeah.
We want to help. And how cool is it? Because like you and I have connected, so we've made a genuine connection, and I've just been so blessed to meet so many connections with so many people that I am like a resource for people. So if anyone needs anything, like they can come to me. And I personally can't provide the, you know, treatment or sober living or something, but I'm like X, Y, Z, you know, like reach out to all these people. So I love the exit team.
Huge.
I love what we do on here. I love that we get to bring recovery right into someone's living room and let them know there's hope. Like 16 years ago, like you were robbing people, committing larceny in prison, you know, and like now look at you, like you have about to have 5 sober homes, and like you're helping people, and you're helping, like not only are you like helping your family and you're helping the men, but you're helping that entire community, which in return is so much bigger than you and so much bigger than that community, because it is going to have an impact on the entire state if it keeps going that way. And then eventually once the state is impacted in a positive manner, everything's real, energy is real, it's going to spread. You know, like what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
And it's really cool that we've had this opportunity to sit down here together. We're out of time.
I know, that's crazy.
I always like, we get so caught up in
the time, 45 minutes.
It goes by, right? We should have.
Imagine Bobby was here.
I didn't know you were perfect, so I thought we could do it in 30 minutes, but you're so perfect. We need more time.
Oh, yeah, they know for next time.
I would like to get your wife on the show.
Yeah.
I want to meet her.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
She sounds like wildfire, and I love fire, so.
Yeah. She's awesome. She has a huge heart, man. She's, you know, she's also in this process with us, and she's amazing. You know, she loves God, and, you know, I'm a blessed man, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching and joining us. Please make sure to reach out to Keith. I don't care if you have, you know, questions about your own recovery, questions about a family member's recovery, just like questions about anything, like reach out to him, utilize him as a resource. He's available for you and your community. Thank you guys.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.